Good morning, everybody. I see a lot of cool names in here that are continuing to filter in. In the interest of everybody's time, it is 9:30, so we're going to go ahead and start. We'll kind of do welcome and introductions and see if we can't get the last few to filter in. Please feel free to unmute yourself and chime in at any time if you have any questions. I know GoToWebinar is just a little bit clunkier to use, so please bear with us. As part of that, I probably will send out a survey after today. I'm just asking a couple general questions about meeting times, meeting setup, and also our platform, just because we want to kind of hone in and see if we can improve that a little bit. So I know you guys probably have a dearth of surveys and internet meetings right now, and I really want to fill that void in your life. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start our 2020 second quarter coordinators meeting here. This is being recorded, so please, there is no such thing as a dumb question. Just know that all things are being recorded. So, and there's Trish.
Hi.
She's here. All right, and so just our agenda, welcome introductions. We're gonna have quite a few new people to STARS, especially we added an extra month since our last meeting. Some kudos. We're going to discuss the STARS contracts, our metrics, any updates with the application, and then Trish has got some pretty cool training on a new kiddo we just put in this spring.
Interesting. Eye-opening?
Eye-opening, there you go. All right, so probably a little tough to do internet introductions. Obviously, you know me and Trish, and then I assume in the comment section you guys can see everybody else who is here. Let's see. And then I do, as class, I do have to start off the meeting with an apology. A few of you might have gotten some extra emails last Thursday, so we apologize for that. That actually did come out of our development server. Excuse me. So one of our developers was working on a new process for the emails we're going to do in the future. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to us, there were live email addresses in the development server, and so a bunch of people starting about 4:30 in the morning got a few password expiration notifications. So apologize, it's been fixed, and all live email addresses have been taken out of the development server. So if anybody brings it up to you, that is the story behind that. We want to welcome new to STARS, St. Charles City Fire, Ripley County Ambulance, Warren County Ambulance, Pattonville, Hazelwood, and St. John have all joined us this spring. All right, and then Trish, did you have some kudos?
I always have kudos. We have lots of kudos. As always, you know, we want to highlight everybody who's been going above and beyond, which we know is more than just what we have pictured here. So please, if you're doing anything extra out in your community with your kids, let us know. Send us pictures, if only with permission, please. But you know, let us know so we can, even if it's extra training or whatnot, we'd like to highlight you and use you as an example to show others how much you're doing out in the community. But thank you to EMSC. Who, if you all aren't familiar, that's our Missouri EMS for Children group. They are always looking for PECs, which is the Pediatric Emergency Care Coordinator, I believe. So they always want that one person from every EMS agency to serve in that position, so they have a good contact for training. A lot of times that person doubles as the STARS coordinator, we found, which has been fun. But they, you know, they've been moving forward with doing some more emergency trach scenarios and using some more STARS information in general with their training as well, which we appreciate. So thank you to Liz Kendrick and the EMSC out in Columbia. You know, Melville's done a phenomenal job this year with, you know, holiday parties and really engaging their community for STARS. We have that pictured here, and Rock Township, of course, invited their STARS again to their holiday party, which was nice, and had quite a few show up. We had a, you know, pictured in the lower left was a clinical save that MedStar had with one of our trach children who yeah, like I said, they had a BLS crew actually start that, and then I believe had ALS intervention and got a clinical save on that kiddo. So we were giving them one of our new stars, and I don't think we showed that yet.
Yeah.
I'll show you if you want to get one. So we have a new like Stellar Award. So we're always looking to give those out as well, but it's just a fun little pin that we ordered to recognize, you know, those calls that people went above and beyond on. That middle picture out there, we have Highland EMS, who has one of our pretty challenging status epilepticus kiddos. He's known to be a hard nut to break when he goes into a long seizure, doesn't respond well to benzos. After talking to neurology, they felt like the best option for him was to get Keppra on board ASAP. So he was like a lot of our parents, he had parents rather who, which is a very common situation where they've decided that if they are going to be forced to their closest hospital rather than be able to come directly to us or Children's, that they would rather just put their child in the car and drive fast. And that's not to speak negatively of any of the community hospitals, but I understand that. I understand the safety concerns around that. And I also understand why parents would want to do that, because I've honestly been in that position myself where I've argued with neurology because I stuck my child in a car and drove fast while she was having seizure clusters rather than stop at a closest hospital. I just was more comfortable having her here at Lennon. So, you know, in talking to neurology saying, hey, we can't fix this, mom is not going to call 911 if they're going to be forced to the closest hospital. They said they didn't care as long as he had an airway and as long as he had Keppra running. And they were very adamant that they only would do this with children that had known disorders, that they understand what's going on. They're already prone to status epilepticus and they know their game. So with this kiddo, he's like, you know, they can keep going. They can go the extra 15 minutes it takes to get to Glennon, as long as they can get that Keppra on board. So Region 4 did some awesome work with us, and St. Elizabeth's out in Region 4 actually provided the Keppra, which was excellent because that ended up being the key that allowed us to do it. But in training out there and got that on board on all their ambulances. So now they'll be set to hopefully come straight here if they have another incident with our little friend. And I really, really hope we didn't miss anyone. If we did, it wasn't intentional. So please, 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 like I stated before, if you're doing anything fun out in your community, even training or, you know, helping out families in any way. I know I had some go out and do hand sanitizers and such, but if we've missed you, please let us know so we can add you on these slides.
All right, I just wanted to briefly discuss viewer contracts. I know I've started reaching out to some of our districts. The original users and viewer contracts were 3 years in length, and lo and behold, we are starting to expire on some of those. So there is a continuance clause. The contract will remain in place, but we are trying to upgrade our services that are reaching that point to the newer contract. Just because we think the language is better, it matches what we're doing in the program a little closer these days. So it's still free to EMS. It removes some of the really strange language we had in there previously, such as, you know, this will only be on iOS and stuff like that. There was an increase in the cybersecurity insurance in the new contract. But then the old contract, especially if your service is on an old user contract, there was actually a little bit more liability for your service. So even if you're a service, you originally signed the user contract, but you don't really want to write plans anymore at your service, or you don't have the ability to write plans, it probably would be better if we go ahead and upgrade you to the new viewer contract. Just a brief reminder for those, I know I toss these words around because I use them every day. User contracts are services who can write plans, and that will now just be the children's hospitals. Viewer contracts are people who have access to the electronic application. They can see the kids in there, but they cannot edit plans. And so you can kind of see why user contracts have a little bit more liability to them, because you're actually putting HIPAA into an electronic system that people are accessing from everywhere. And so that's why the language is sort of changing and all that. So from here on out, all of our EMS services will be on viewer contracts. And so if, like I said, I will reach out to your service whenever you hit your 3-year expiration. But if there are any services who just want to proactively go ahead and just change to the newer contract, please reach out to me and we can get that done. A lot of the language is very similar, just some tweaks on some of that stuff. Just a reminder, as I said, we've kind of, over the years, since the inception of STARS, we now have changed the roles and responsibilities a little bit. That is not a knock against anybody. We don't want you to feel like we're taking anything away. We just kind of redivided up the tasks and the chores of STARS. And things, we really want to work with you guys on and we need help with, utilization of the plans for emergencies, just keeping your personnel up to date. And we're going to touch on that more on some later screens with some upcoming updates. But, the one thing I can't do, I can put all the plans I want in the world into the STARS application, but I don't know who you just hired yesterday, and I don't know who just retired the day before that at your service. So if you don't mind just managing your personnel, and like I said, we'll have some tools for that. Hey, please, training, we are happy to come out and do training as possible, and touch on that in a minute. Or if you guys are doing training at your own services and you just need us to provide some resources or some info or Dr. Laffey's opinion on something, please let us know. And then, obviously PR and community events are a little difficult right now. So there's a slight hold on that, but we are here to help you guys. And then we'll work on, the creation of the plans and having the kids in there and trying to keep everything up to date. Hopefully we've alleviated some of the pain points for some of my STARS coordinators previously, such as, waiting on family to answer them and all that. So it's still going to take all of us to help keep these kids safer and to kind of develop this program that we're pursuing. We just, like I said, kind of redivided the rules up a little bit, and I think there's some pretty good synergy there. And so I know I touched on this last time, but just to emphasize, once we can do home visits again, but even if we can't do that, there's a lot of innovation in this world right now. There are ways to Zoom or do FaceTime and meet families and meet kids. And by all means, if first of all, use that as a successful tool, and then secondly, we can PR that as long as the family's okay with it. All right. Whoops, I move too fast sometimes. Let's use that. And then we can, track the families down a little bit better and sometimes get the paperwork and the forms done. So one thing I did want to ask, and you can answer either out loud or if you want to type in the chat, I was trying to brainstorm, are there any different tools or ideas that would really benefit my STARS coordinators? Like, is there something that can be in the application that would help you, or a form or a flyer we can create, to kind of help you guys achieve those roles? So I don't have an answer for you. Like I said, if anybody has something off the top of their head. Oh, that's all right. I have a medical question you can look up for Dr. Siegler here shortly. All right, like I said, just type those in the chat or email me later if you think of something, what would make your life easier as a coordinator, either communicating with us or something with the family. All right. We're gonna run through the metrics real quick this morning. So as of yesterday, 575 active STARS in the electronic application. Obviously, we know we still have a few more than that out there in binder world, but as we work on re-centralizing all the kids, those numbers continue to grow and grow.
Sorry.
My ball, I swear. There we go. You just need to turn your speakers down.
There we go.
time to answer what is the shelf half-life, shelf life of Kepra. Thank you.
Is that Dr. Siegler question?
Yes.
It was long.
It was long, right? I could look it up. I don't have my email open now, but we did. I could probably dig up that email we got from Morgan and Pharmacy. She kind of ran through. It was really nice. I'll get it and send it to you because it has a really. She did a really nice review of, shelf lives and all that kind of stuff for Kepra. We were kind of comparing Kepra and valproic acid, trying to figure out which would be the best one. There was kind of some advantages and disadvantages to both, but it was pretty long. It was long enough that we didn't think, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can find that email from Morgan and send it to you.
Yeah, because they reconstitute it.
Yeah, exactly. So and that was one of the advantages, I think, and storage is super easy. So yeah, I haven't looked at that in a while, but it didn't seem like it was an issue for us.
Awesome. Dr. Kane says about 3 years. And then to answer your other question, Dr. Siegler, definitely we can put more of those up. I have started trying to put more of our trainings up on YouTube. And every time I do, just for any of those who find our STARS YouTube channel, if there is a CEU course available, in the comments underneath the video, I put the link to the CEU course just for the providers who want it for the CEUs. But there's a lot of advantages if you don't need the CEUs to watching it on YouTube, because you can stop it, you can pause it, you can jump to wherever you want, you can rewatch parts. So that I will try to continue to improve that. I agree. I think that would be good. You can see, as like I said, as we're transitioning to the binder. So for instance, we took 23 live for Lincoln County last week, and I think we have about the same number to go for them again once we get their HIPAA waivers for their kids. So these numbers continue to grow. This is just a breakdown by different regions. Obviously, with the way Illinois is set up, we have all of our different service providers over there pooled together. So they definitely constitute some big services when you look at this chart, but that's just an example of how the kids are divvied, and then this is how they're divided by state currently. And then we did implement the dispatch, and then I also have the emergency activation stats. So you can see the numbers, we kind of expected them to be a little bit low. Obviously, we'd like to bring more and more dispatch agencies on board, and I think we would see these numbers start to climb, but already we've had 12 so far since the last meeting, or since we put the system in place in March. And definitely emergency activation. So we still have some services, of course, who are logging in and hitting the emergency activation, whether they got dispatched or not. And so this is just a map of that chart. Some of those numbers also are represented by my ED, who, whenever they get a call from your guys' ambulances coming to them, will log in and hit that. And we still find that useful because we can track our stars and see them coming into the ED and do call follow-up on that. I believe is Central County actively using the dispatch feature. So to my knowledge, they're not yet. I have not seen them send one out yet. They have agreed to address it kind of as COVID dies down. So we'd love to take that back up with them. The way we are currently handling it, some of those dispatches you see, me and Trish still get text from Central County anytime a STARS call goes out, and so we actually will hop in and send the dispatch whenever that is occurring. Just it doesn't happen as often at 3 in the morning as it does in 3 in the afternoon. So.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I know that there's going to be more work shifted towards you two to keep track of the patients being updated and that sort of thing. Can you guys give me the 30-second, like, what do you guys do whenever you get there in the morning? Is there a way to like keep track of your patients, like as they come into the hospital, so you can update them? Do you have like a board that you see whenever you log into Epic?
Yeah, so we have an Epic patient list with all of our kids on it. And so that's actually Trisha's go-to in the morning, is she always just logs in, grabs Epic, and starts seeing which of our kids are in-house. So we do catch some of the kids who got, caught EMS or took a ride here. That way, we do miss a few if they just stopped in the ED for an hour and then got discharged right back out. We won't have that captured as well.
We started tracking that as well. Midday priors, ED visits.
So yeah, it's just kind of, trying to capture that overall picture of what's happening for the kiddos, how the system's working for them.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that out in the general EMS population, you don't have quite the thumb on the pulse of all these kids, but leveraging the power of the EHR, you guys are able to see who might be in, what might be something that needs to be changed. So that's really kind of cool that you guys do that each day.
And then this is just people as far as using, kind of continuing to, reiterate usage of the application. And so we did implement Google Analytics. You can see we didn't put it in till May, but 25 unique users since then. And then a few super users who are in a fair amount. All right, unless somebody really wants to dwell on the stats, I won't hang on to that too long. And then, of course, training and education has taken a bit of a hit this year, but we are still trying to get out there where we can. We do have our webinars up. They haven't been used a whole lot, and I'm always open to feedback on that if people don't like the platform or if their personnel are just overwhelmed right now and doing other things, but especially if you have some people who need.
Sorry.
I did the same thing.
That's how long it took me to log into this.
All right, so especially if you have some people for your service who really need pediatric CEUs. I'm sorry, did I talk over someone?
Yeah, this is Josh again. Hey, I wanted to ask, is there any benefit to this group and the larger medical group that's on to maybe having a page on the East Central Region EMS website, which I know not everybody on this call is from East Central Region, but I think everybody could get to it pretty easily, because I know everybody's training is available, but sometimes it's a little bit onerous to find it on different websites and that sort of thing. If we could maybe talk East Central into having a landing page for all trainings, especially the online ones that are out there for the groups. I'll see if I can take that on, if that sounds decent.
I mean, I don't think it ever hurts to have a collection of resources somewhere, especially if people don't. I mean, I know this exists because I work on it every day, but like I said, if there are providers out there who need access to this information and don't know it exists, yeah, whatever way we can get that broadcast out there. Stephanie. So that is useful to know, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing that. So NREMT has lifted their distributive learning cap.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what is that?
There used to be limitations on the number of what you could do online versus had to be supported otherwise. So,
well, that's a good idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Dr. Repoff suggests a pediatric COVID update from Dr. Laffey, St. Louis region update, morbidity, mortality, experience with STARS kids. Anything else we've learned? Cool. Thanks, Dr. Repoff.
Our overall ER numbers are going up a bit. We actually had 100 patients the other day for the first time since this all started. We were down as low as in the 40s, so we're climbing up a little bit. Our COVID numbers, boy, someone was just telling me what we had out of all the patients that have been tested. I don't know the exact numbers, but we've been about 3% positive is what out of the numbers that we've swabbed. It's kind of like most of this, it's, the swabbing hasn't been super well controlled as far as who gets swabbed and who decides to get swabbed. So it's really kind of hard to know what to make of that data because we don't have an absolute, this is our process for who always gets swabbed and who doesn't, other than hospital admissions and that kind of stuff. But our total positives have been very few. The number of sick kids have not been many. We've had a couple, maybe 4 altogether who clearly have had the multi-system inflammatory response, the post-COVID thing. We just had one, I think, with some myocarditis that came in over the weekend who was pretty sick. But not very many, which doesn't surprise me because our total numbers aren't great. I mean, that's gotten a lot of publicity, but it's really it's a small portion of the kids who get COVID, and kids are a small portion of the people who get COVID. So I was not anticipating that we were going to see a whole lot of those, and we've seen a handful. We've had a couple of, unfortunately, it's a fairly nebulous. If they come in and they're super sick, it's kind of easy. So I'm not really worried about the sick ones because everyone knows, the kid who comes in obviously shocking, looks sick as hell. Those are the easy ones. The question came up is it possible that you start out looking really good and can crash really fast? And in which case we should be admitting all these kids and digging deep into every single kid who's had a fever for 3 or 4 days. That really hasn't kind of panned out. I think there's still a lot we don't know about that, but I know of at least 4 kids who clearly had the sick version of it up in the unit on pressors and that kind of thing, and they all ended up doing well. As far as the impact on STARS kids, I don't think it's been great, but again, the testing has been fairly random, so I don't know that we know for sure what the impact is. We don't have a policy that says every STARS kid gets swabbed, but I'm not aware of any of them that have gotten admitted to the hospital who have been positive or got sick because that COVID was the reason that they were hospitalized. And again, we've had very few kids who have been hospitalized primarily because they got sick from COVID. I don't know that we've had a sick, just COVID kid. If we have, there's not been very many of them. Most of our positives have been, oh, by the way, I'll be darned, we're positive, almost not even expected. So that's kind of where we're standing right now. I don't know if there's anything else, specific questions, let me know, but that's kind of where we are.
Dr. Ebba, follow up, but do we know what percentage of kids get the systemic inflammatory reaction?
I've tried to get that number. I was trying to look into that because when this first came out, I mean, as all this stuff happens, there's this gigantic flurry of emails back and forth, and everyone's very excited, and we got to get this diagnostic criterion. And people are like, man, we got to be ready for this. This is going to be a big deal. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't think this is going to be that big of a deal because the numbers that were coming out of places that had way, way, way more cases than we do were not great. 40 cases, 50 cases seems like a lot, but their number of COVID cases was exponentially higher than ours at any level. So my gut feeling is we were going to have a small handful of them. I tried to look into the problem is you'll get data that's from one institution and then you'll try and get, well, what percentage of all their kids that actually got this? But is that really representative of the community? Is it just that facility? Is there referral patterns that might impact what kids they get? So it's very difficult to figure that out, but it's not a large number. I think everyone agrees that it's a small percentage of the kids who have had it. That's my take. I don't know if anyone's actually put out a number as to the, what the incidence of it is once you've had it. And many of the kids don't remember, that's the thing. They don't remember ever having the COVID. That's not like, oh, I had COVID last week. So no, most of these kids are COVID swab negative and antigen positive and antibody positive, excuse me. So they don't even remember their COVID swab is negative, but their antibody screen shows that they had it in the past. That's by far, that's every one of ours has been like that. And the majority of reported cases have been like that. And very few of those kids, other than, I guess I did kind of have a cold last week, that kind of thing, but very few of them were actually, oh gosh, yes, I had COVID and now I've got this. That's not the way it's worked for us, or in most places.
That's a ton of good information. I am gonna guide it back to STARS just a little bit more real quick.
So I think, Justin, I think the bottom line is, I think that's a concern is, my gosh, I'm out here and I don't, so what am I gonna make? My feeling so far is the sick ones are sick and you're not gonna miss this. It's like, you may not say this is exactly what's going on and recognize it doesn't make much difference because we don't really know exactly what the specific treatment is, but the sick ones have been sick. They come in and they look like crap. So to me, that's kind of reassuring in a way, right? It's a needle in a haystack, but it's a fairly big, really sharp needle that you're probably going to recognize. That's kind of the way I look at it. Is there really these kids who you're going to send home and they're going to come back deathly ill? I'm not sure that those are out there. It sounds like there's kind of reports like that might be happening, but I'm not really sure scientifically that that's what's happening. So I feel like we're going to pick up the really bad ones. And it won't be hard to find them. At least we haven't had a hard time finding them. That's my take. I don't know if anyone else has any experience with it that's out there.
Dr. Seeger's kind of backing up what you're saying as well. So, not a subtle presentation.
Yeah, I think so.
Stephanie, I did unmute you.
I muted myself again, so I wouldn't, because we have other things going on in the training center. I didn't want to over speak Dr. Laffey.
No, you're all good.
So NREMT just put out something like a week or two ago that they lifted the cap on distributive education. So when you re-register for your biannual national registry, they used to have a cap. I think it was 10 for EMT and maybe 15 for paramedic of hours that you could take that didn't have an instructor present for the training. And they lifted that completely with COVID. So you could have all of your hours as distributive if you need to. And they pushed the deadline back to June 30th. So you got like 2 weeks between now and when you have to resubmit your stuff for 2020. So if anybody is missing hours, I'm telling this for the education coordinators on the team, if your people need hours, they can use as many of the STARS classes as they want. Also, Kim McKenna really loved the G-Tube one. She actually sent it to the publisher so that they could get in touch with you guys because it was so good. And she assigned it to the entire paramedic program to take. And we asked our providers to take it as well because we have a ton of kids, not just STARS kids, but we have a ton of just regular kids that are not, complex, that have G-tubes, and it really helps explain which ones we can troubleshoot and which ones we can't.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks. So do have that. That video is one of the ones that's available here on our webinars for anybody service who wants to take it. It's aimed at kids with G-tubes. I can't lie, the info carries over pretty well to your adult population as well. So if nothing else, the one thing I learned out of that is, why I had to stand at nursing home stations at 2 in the morning for G-tube changes, taking them to the ED. I now know. All right, and then so this is a cool upcoming training opportunity through Slitch. I didn't know if you want to touch on that real quick, Trish.
Yeah, I can. I mean, we may have, more upcoming too that I will put on. Oh, sorry, kind of social distance again. Fine. That I'll try to get out to you guys. But I did want to put this one out there. We don't have a link to it yet, but I did speak to Haley's. I touched base with Haley's parents, and they're going to provide a link prior to. I don't know how. It's not going to provide CEUs per se. It might not be completely applicable to the EMS community and what your job is, but I think it would be a really good insight into the world of pulmonary hypertension. There's a lot of unknown, especially amongst the pre-hospitals. It's not something we can necessarily do a whole lot to treat and that we're too familiar with. But I think just, I think that I'm predicting that having that back and forth between cardiology, Haley's parents, and their specialists there, their NPs is going to be probably pretty interesting. I'm interested in it, so I'm going to join it. I will keep you all updated on the link when it comes out. So that's all I have about that. I also wanted to add, we've been struggling with getting training to you all with COVID. It's really taken a toll on us moving forward on that aspect. But Stephanie just mentioned that we had the G-tube training that was well received within SCAD. We'd like to do more of those and do even a better job in condensing them so that they're quicker and more to the point and that you all can learn from them. The ones that we have actually scheduled with some of our clinics here are listed here. So, we already talked to our neurosurge NP and she's really excited about it. Just to go over, VNS, shunts, and baclofen pumps. To hear from the expert and see the back and forth between her and us relating to how that would relate to EMS. So, even just shunts in general, we have new shunts out there that are programmable in different ways. So she was even going to run through showing us how they program them and how they measure pressures, et cetera. Just some interesting information that I want to ask her too. But we also have, if you watch the G2 video, Morgan that did that with us is going to do central lines with us, which I think will be a really good one as well. We have a lot of kids going home more and more with Broviacs and such that we don't advocate for accessing on a routine basis, but we definitely want people to be comfortable with accessing them in a high acuity situation where they do need that access. This renal 911 I have partially done. We need to record it. I'm going to just give you some highlights from it here when we go over education. Something else that we're going to put out probably separately, do adrenal insufficiency, but then do a DI and SI ADH one, because we've had all of a sudden an influx of these kids. And that is something that definitely EMS needs to know, because we can really cause harm with just simple fluids. So we will be doing those. And we're taking requests. So please, as we build our library, you have weird things out there that you would like to see. Cardiology, probably some of our especially like our single ventricle kids, our hypoxic kids. I think those would be great to do. I think Nick would probably do a good job with that. But yeah, but we would seriously, anything that you guys are interested in that you'd like to see those, we can provide CEUs, and we would really like to build up this library into something bigger than it is now. So thank you.
All right, so yeah, we're still trying to make it out there right now for the high-risk discharges, just like we always did. Obviously, we're not inviting the kiddos to come. And then as possible or as needed, we'll just make training videos to replace whenever we can't be there in person. And then just moving forward, once again, kind of a brainstorm thing, but for the maintenance training and just the periodic training such as trach and all that stuff, what works best for you guys? If I would wish webinars would fix it. I have a gut feeling that it won't. Online learning is just not as good as classroom learning. But whether we can just supplement with YouTube videos, whether we need to come up with a plan for us to be able to get out and do that training with your services. So that's sort of an individual district question, but what does that look like for you guys? And I know I have 2 different states and a lot of different rules and a lot of different polities. So kind of if you guys let us know what works for you, but we still want to be bringing training out as long as we can do it in a way that's safe for everybody.
We did do a PALS course, our first in-person PALS course a couple of weeks ago. We had the advantage of the SSM training center, which is out by St. Clair, so lots of space, but we were able to, if you got big enough rooms and a couple different stations spread out, and we were able to do it kind of somewhat safely, I guess. I mean, everyone had masks on and that kind of thing, but you do need a lot of space. And obviously, going out to a lot of the places we've been out to, that's clearly not always the case, right? We've all been, crammed into 6 or 8 people in the kitchen or whatever. So if think outside the box, if there's rooms to do it, if you can set up 2 or 3 different tables, 6, 10, 15 feet apart in place, maybe we can pull something off.
Maybe the ambulance bays, the fire bays.
Exactly, something of that sort, so people can kind of spread out a little bit. One person has to demonstrate, maybe step away from the table, then the other person has to come up and kind of do it, as opposed to everyone kind of cramming around. There's probably ways to pull it off. We do need to have space and think a little bit outside the box. Maybe the weather's nice, do it outside.
All right, so there were having
a big fan.
So
blows against everybody, and then just
out the other way.
Humors go out.
Vacuum suction.
Exactly right. Something like that.
So
it's got big fans, right? That's a thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the fire trucks.
Absolutely, big fans. We can do that.
Big toolboxes, Swiss Army knives. So changes since the 2.0 rollout. This isn't, none of these is a particularly big deal for any of you, other than to let you know we're just continuing updating. We're no longer doing like, we'll do one big update per quarter. We just have periodically, sometimes on Monday or Wednesday or whenever the IT team is ready, they are sending out upgrades to the system. So we've kind of done some iOS fixes. Internet Explorer, one thing to touch on that, it does still work. It works better than the old platform did in IE. But things I didn't know in this world, so IE is not actually supported by Microsoft anymore. They plan on it being terminated in like 2021. So that feels like a game changer for those of us who grew up in the .com era. But so that will go away. So that's actually why a lot of applications don't work that well on IE anymore, is because it's not actually being kept up to date anymore. And so if you at all possible can use Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, any of the other browsers will run the application just fine. Like I said, we've done a couple other fixes as we've gone along here. And then just a brief reminder to everybody who gets into the application, under the resources tab, there are some useful things up there, links to our training, links to our YouTube videos, and then Pam has put together some resources for just simple flyer sheets for how to do different things in the application. So whether you need that for you, I suspect many of you don't need it as much, but you have an employee who's trying to log in or reset their password, you can just, send them the PDF or whatever you want to do so they can get themselves set back up. So like I said, and there is a copy of the HIPAA waiver up there under STARS documents. So if you're meeting with the family and you just want to go ahead and get that paperwork done, that is available up there to you. We have some major impending changes rolling down the tracks. So we're looking at June 24th will be user management will drop. That is what your services who were on the prior application, that is the power that the coordinators used to have, the ability to add your personnel in, remove your personnel, to change and edit details about your service. So all of that will be returned to you as of next week. And then in July, the formal dual MD approval process will go in, and I have plenty of pictures for both of those. So for adding a user, and like I said, this is just to let you know this is coming next week and remind everybody about it. I will also put together a how-to YouTube video so you can use the program for your service. But you do have the ability to add a user. It will auto-populate the addstarsprogram.org behind their username, and then you can enter all the info for your people. We are asking for phone numbers these days, and so one thing you can do, we do need phone numbers for every new person or every truck account that's created. However, there will be the option to opt out of the dispatches. So if you have that employee who's like, I don't want to receive pages in the middle of the night on my off day, that 3 times a year that they go out, I just don't want them. So you can just take that person out so that they don't receive the dispatches. But we need their phone number for the multi-factor authentication, because that will be a requirement as we get spread to different hospitals. And so you have to have that ability to send an email or a text message to somebody and say, here's a 6-digit number, can you please re-enter and confirm that you are the right person who can access all this. As I said, you'll be able to edit your service provider, which is your agency. And so you will be able to go in there and edit the information. And then you will have your list of users affiliated with you that you can go in and just add or remove people at that time. As I said, you can edit any info you want about you. We are putting addresses in currently for headquarters. That's just for future, if there has to be a mailing that goes out, or we're also talking about whether there needs to be a mapping system in the future. And so we figure we might as well go ahead and capture the data now, since it's just adding an extra field. And then the ability to edit users will be a thing. And as I said, you can choose whether they are enrolled to receive dispatching. And if they work for more than one service, they can choose which ones they want to receive dispatches for. Dual MD approval will be coming, like I said, in July. This is just the workflow for it, and I broke it down a little bit more, but we've been talking about this for a while. This is very informally what happens anytime Trish and I write a plan, or Gina and Sabina write a plan. We send it to our specialists in the hospital, or Dr. Laffey or Dr. Siegler, and say, hey, is this an appropriate plan for this kid? And then they have to check off on that. And so this system is going to be built out to where they can say, yes, please send that to the EMS medical director, or they can say, you know what, that doesn't look right, that doesn't seem right for that kid, you actually don't know what that syndrome means, please go write the real name. And they can give us that feedback, we can fix the plan and then resubmit it to them. It has to clear the hospital medical director, to be sent to the EMS medical director, and then they get the same ability. So they might receive the record and they say, well, you know, we don't carry that med, that plan won't work for our kid, please look at this. Or they can say, oh yeah, that looks 100% appropriate, my crews can handle that, hit yes, and then the patient becomes active. We are trying to just build in closed loop communication, so maybe we can cut down a little bit on all the emails flying around. And so once that is done, everybody who's involved with that kid will receive a message through the system. The hospital admins, the service provider admins, which is the STARS coordinators, that's you guys, you'll receive an email and say, hey, you guys got a new kiddo that's been approved for your district. Here's the link to go look at their form, and you can go in and check out and see what's going on with them. All right, I talked through a bunch of stuff really fast. A bunch of smart people are giving me smart suggestions over here. I'll read those shortly. Are there any questions about the application, changes that are coming up with it? Do I need to unmute anybody? So that is a good question, Chris. Does an email get sent when they get updated? As of right now, no. So it would be incumbent on the coordinator. We did talk about that. We actually had even discussed anytime a form's updated, should it have to be reapproved by the MDs? But kind of our gut feeling was that a lot of plans would get taken out of service for a while for that, right? Like if I just go in and my kid doubles their aspirin dose and I change that, well, that's not really a significant change for that kid. But you know, if Dr. Laffey is going on vacation and then your EMS medical director is going to a conference, and then all of a sudden we might go 2 weeks. So the way we have it set up is the hospital form writers can make the changes. And then what we're going to build in as a mechanism that if it's a really significant change, we have the option to manually resubmit it to the MDs. As far as updating, that's also sort of incumbent on us. Like we sort of feel like we have a very small group of people responsible for writing plans now, and sort of their job is to do all this air traffic control with it. And so I certainly hope that if there are significant changes, you know, I kind of feel like you don't really want to know if I just double a dose of aspirin. But if that kid went to Glennon and ended up getting trached at their last PICU stay, then I need to, first of all, get Dr. Laffey to say, oh yeah, all your new stuff, this is a brand new kid in some ways, is good. And then we'll notify you for the major changes. All that is certainly, I mean, future development is something we could work on. Absolutely, Miss Megan. I will reach out to you with an email after this. Cool. All right, and I'm going to let Trish, I know we want to keep on time, so I'm going to have Trish do her training topic, a little lighthearted topic called renal failure.
So this is actually what I did was I broke down a larger training and just threw in maybe not even half of it, but just to show a little bit of an example of stuff that we can do for some of your more complex kids who are coming home that we can't do home visits with, that we can't bring out to the district for training. The original one has videos as well. We're hoping to record that actually and have that up soon. But you know, a lot of the work that I do behind the scenes here that people don't see is try to mitigate risks for our kids, see what's happening to them at these outside hospitals, how to make EMS more comfortable, how to more, you know, treat them in the most appropriate manner, the safest manner, and get them to tertiary care faster. So when I look at these kids, I like to really take a look at some of our medically complex kiddos to see what's happening to them at outside hospitals, how long is it taking, and what can we teach EMS, and how can we increase comfort to get them to us faster. Grady is, what did I do here? How do I move forward?
Bottom left.
Sorry, I had to move over to the next computer. It's 4. There we go. So Grady is a Warren County star that when he went out there, we went ahead and made one of those for the first time, one of these video trainings for his district. And I actually got a hold of mom and had her send me some video of him at baseline, had her send me a video of her hooking up his albumin infusions just to get people more comfortable since we couldn't get people out to his house. But something I thought about when looking at his plan was, you know, the idea behind STARS plans is to make them so that they're quick references, because they're supposed to be used in that high acuity, quick emergency where you don't have a whole lot of time. So when I look at his plan, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff going on there, and kind of is the opposite of what we intend to do with STARS. As you take a look at this and you're like, what does that mean? You know, what does this mean to me? So I thought it would be good to break down everything that's going down with him into simpler terms, as simple as we can make it, because he's far from simple. But so here's his actual STARS plan as it stands. I probably need to update it today. He's one of those that needs to get updated quite frequently. But he was, his primary diagnosis is congenital nephrotic syndrome, which is something that, you know, it will never be cured until he is, you know, hopefully receives a transplant. But it's actually a pretty typical kid at baseline, typical infant to look at. So again, here's your anticipated emergencies that we have, you know, transport and getting to Glenn if it's safe, all of his risks and cautionary notes. Like, wow, again, that's a whole lot. So I thought, you know, we'll just break down Grady. So here's the next page where you have his medical equipment, his medications that he has daily, which is a whole lot. Then we're going to talk about why. Wow, this is a busy slide, something I try not to do, right? So just breaking down his nephrotic syndrome. You know, when I first looked at Grady, I thought, oh wow, he's so atypical. But then when I read more and more about it, he's actually a very typical case of this syndrome. So it's caused by this mutation in the NPHS1 gene, which means nothing to any of us, I know, but where what that means is that that gene provides instructions for making proteins, and specifically podocytes, which are located in the glomeruli here, which you see, I have a picture here. And what they do in a nutshell is prevent the important proteins from filtering out. And Dr. Laffey can jump in here because he can explain a lot better than I can. But basically, I'm doing great. Okay. So they're supposed the proteins that we want to keep in the blood are not staying in the blood. They're leaking out, and they're leaking out rapidly and continuously. So we have these big open slits in this diaphragm here that aren't supposed to be there. So basically we have all of these molecules, and most importantly, these really important proteins that are just passing through his system. So what does that mean to him? We've got really important stuff slipping through the cracks here. So one of the most important is albumin. We've had lots of kids that are on albumin infusions. He's the first one that I have in STARS that gets them at home daily. So what albumin does is keeps fluid in the bloodstream so it doesn't leak into other tissues like crazy, which is what he is currently doing. So he also has this, just like we said before, massive proteinuria, where he's just spilling out a lot of proteins in his urine. Interestingly enough, which I wasn't aware of, he's also dumping some pretty important factors that make the clotting cascade work properly. So it also makes him at high risk for developing dangerous blood clots. So this is a kid that we also have to keep on pretty heavy anticoagulants. And in fact, he's already had one blood clot. He had a cerebral clot, which was found in his first admission. So let's see. And again, this is just an example of a much longer presentation, so I apologize, I'm skipping around quite a bit. I tried to condense it for more of an example. But what does this mean? You know, he's a constant balancing act, literally, of trying to keep all this important stuff inside and supplementing what he needs. So what happens when our scales tip and we have him imbalanced, which is actually common? I think, I don't want to just read the slide out for you, but you guys know, once we start dropping mag, this becomes dangerous as well. But you may see muscle cramping, twitching. Albumin's a big one. If we don't keep that constant flow of albumin in for him, he's going to become very edematous. He's going to just have this fluid overload, which puts him at high potential for respiratory distress, and fluid can also start to build around the heart, which is going to be very dangerous as well. Potassium is a big issue with him, which obviously you guys know from cardiology, you're going to start seeing some arrhythmias, and that gets scary when we're talking about kids, because when we do regular PALS, we go through PALS algorithms, usually without considering the fact that there's some other things we can do to bounce out of that algorithm to potentially treat. So that's where it becomes important that we know that we may need to actually deviate away just from the antiarrhythmics and stuff if we're running one of those mega codes, and start talking to the access center, looking at this kid more closely. Do we need to add calcium? Do we need to run mag, just like we would do for an adult, which again makes it even more important to have those weight-based dosing, access to weight-based dosing for pediatrics in your ambulance. Calcium's a big one with our friend Grady. He's continuously low. I just checked on him today, and he gets labs daily, which is actually helpful. We'll talk about that in the next slides, but like today his calcium was 6.8, so he should be more around 8.6. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay, so he's constantly low. So
he's almost never above 7, I think, or rarely above 7. He has a hard time with that.
Which is also interesting because our kids are they almost get, I feel like their bodies get accustomed to running low,
yeah.
but
freak you out with someone else's just another day in the office.
Yeah, so what we can see there is seizures. And just like, one of our new DI cases, when we're looking at a kid that we know we have a reason for status epilepticus, should we start looking more into treating the cause when we know that the benzos are failing? So, and that's different in our regular kids with epilepsy versus our kids who have seizures that are induced by electrolyte imbalances. So if we know this is what they're prone to, is there a way that we can start talking about correcting that in the field, rather than just continuously dump benzos into them that we know is only going to potentially cause respiratory problems and not fix the actual cause of the seizure? So good to know these things are going on. Just real quick, he has a Broviac. That was part of the lecture. We talked about that briefly, but that's going to be a whole lecture hopefully soon that we can put out to you guys. But you can see a picture of it there. Extremely important that we use aseptic technique. Sterile is preferred, but we know that in the field we can't really meet sterile standards, but we need to be as clean as possible. This kid also is extremely immunosuppressed. His immune system is essentially broken, and he doesn't respond to IVIG, which is what we usually do for our immunosuppressed kids, and I do not understand the physiology behind why he doesn't respond to it, but he doesn't, so he has no immune system. It's broke. So very, very high risk here. But again, if you can't get access on him, you can't get an IO, you're working a code, and you potentially have the ability to treat with adding things like calcium, mag, etc. It's good to know that we do have that access. We wanted to add, this skips around again, sorry, but just some key points and an example of what we can do at trainings. We wanted to add his little Gus Gear central line wrap because we're seeing more and more of our kids with these. And I think it's great for you guys to know that they have them and what they are, because if you just see this little vest on them, you might not quite know what's going on if mom and dad aren't there. But basically, it's just a new way to really protect these indwelling catheters, and it does a really good job. So keeps them from obviously pulling lines, keeps them more secure. And then one of the things I learned talking to Morgan is we really want to keep these central lines up above the navel, above the belly, because we want to keep them away from stool and everything dirty that happens in their diapers. So this keeps everything very, very protected and in place. One of the reasons I wanted you guys to see it is because you may need to take it off, loosen it, do what you need to do for an arrest. So it's good for you guys to know that that's how it Velcros on, and in the front, that you can loosen it in the back. So, you know, any type of cardioversion you might need to do, you want to remove, you know, to place the patches. Just kind of interesting and good for you guys to know that it's there. I'm not paying attention at all to the questions, so we'll look at those in just a second. Just to wrap up Grady, which is difficult to do, I like to steal this quote from Dr. Hrechko. He's got a great podcast. If you guys aren't familiar and you are podcast fans, it's Pediatric Emergency Playbook, I think. It's really good and easy to listen to for all levels of providers. But I love his quote that he uses for special needs, which is know the player, know the game. Basically saying that if you have a clue what's going on with them, that everything becomes much easier. Something that I thought was interesting that I had to ask Dr. Laffey about was, you know, I'm used to seeing our kids who build up fluid from that are cardiac kids. So that's typically what I see. So I was interested in Grady. I'm like, why does he have, you know, edema all over? Why does he become so puffy in his arms, his legs, you know, we're not used to seeing that. He just globally becomes puffy, versus with our heart kids, it's usually more of a dependent edema. If you don't see it around that easy to collect area around the eyes, you're just going to see it on the back of the head, places where fluid isn't actually going to settle. But Dr. Laffey made it really easy. It made me feel dumb. He said, well, you know, it's because it's a pump problem versus an osmotic problem.
I didn't say duh.
He didn't say duh, but I felt like he said duh, because I was like, ah.
You just say duh.
I was like, that's really simple when you break it down. So yeah, we just have, you know, we have fluid leakage everywhere with a kid like Grady. So that's why you see the puffiness all over versus just in the dependent areas, because it's not a pump issue. Grady, in most cases, you can keep it simple with him. He's most likely not going to decompensate rapidly. He gets labs drawn every single day, like a few other of our kids. So he's being very, very closely watched in house. So really, supplemental O2 for the most part and monitoring him should get you here. But then on the flip side of that, he can be complicated. So again, we can treat seizures, respiratory distress, and any type of symptomatic arrhythmias per protocol. But if it's not working, let's just take a deep breath, calm down. This is where it's really important to know these kids well and have access to those volume-based, weight-based dosing tools. And call the access center. That's something we're pushing more and more for our kids. If you call the ED, they're going to have a hard time giving you really good guidance on this kid, depending on who answers the phone. The access center has been prepared to take these calls. And again, he's getting labs drawn daily. So you may be able to talk to someone who can look at what just came back on him as being critical, and they may give you guidance to, hey, you know, let's go ahead and give him calcium, or let's run MAG. But make sure that you have, like I said, that STARS number and MRN that's located on the form so they can quickly look them up. But again, we're just trying to make things more efficient for these kids, more comfortable for you guys, and easier to get them where they need to be quicker and more efficiently. So any questions about that? I know that wasn't a fantastic training. It was just kind of a highlight of what we can do for some of your kids that are going home that are more complex. And we can even do open sessions with Q&A back and forth. And as I mentioned, I had videos of Grady actually on that original training. And we have plans to do that with some of our other more, you know, medically complex kids as well. So I see some other questions. I don't know if they're new. Dr. Siegler, did you just ask this? They're training for normal labs? And can you do that? Okay.
Oh, that was Stephanie earlier.
Yeah.
That's good. They're training for abnormal labs. Cool. Yep, nothing, Karen.
Okay.
Cool. All right, I know that was sort of a lot of stuff. Does anybody have any specific questions related to today? Want to be unmuted? Awesome. All right, well, we brought it in at just over an hour. So thank you guys for your time on this today. Like I said, awesome. We thank you guys for your time today. Thank you for everything that you do. And there will be some follow-up emails and YouTube videos when those next big pieces roll out over the next couple of weeks. So thank you guys, and please be safe out there because 2020 sucks as far as I can tell. So.
True Christian.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.